Welcome to the Strength Coach Experience podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lego, and here we go. Welcome to the Strength Coach Experience podcast, episode 5. Today we are going to go through a special episode where I am going to share my experience with you. One of the main reasons why I started this podcast is because I truly believe that you can't really get to know someone unless you have known where they've been. And in my experience, with all the coaches that I've met and interacted with, worked with, and just over the years meeting, you really develop quite a relationship with people once you figure out where they've been, and once you can kind of find a common ground with them. I think that's when you really start to be able to work together with coaches, or those are certain coaches that become, lifetime colleagues, if you will. But really, the most amazing part of all the people that I've met is everybody kind of has a similar philosophy, or they came from a, similar working background, if you will, interning and stuff like that. But once you really found out, or once I personally really found out where people came from, how they grew up, the journey that they took to get where they currently were, especially if we were kind of at the same point in the strength and conditioning or sports medicine field, I always thought it was extremely fascinating to find out where they've been and, how that journey or how they got to where they are now was able to shape who they are as a coach, and how the amount of experiences they've had, or the different experiences they've had, really made an impact on their life. I also believe that, by interviewing people and getting them to tell their story, you really get to see that passion. In the last 4 episodes, I think everybody's seen it. The passion really starts to come out with everybody, and that's the part I love. When you talk to somebody and you can see that passion kind of coming out of their eyes, if you will, when they talk about something, and not even in this field. If you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, you want to be an artist, whatever it may be, when you can get that passion and, through the podcast, getting that passion out, getting people really to bring that passion out and having them really come alive as they talk about strength conditioning. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about the field, because when I talk about it, every time I talk about lifting and the relationships I've made and the experiences, that passion just naturally comes out. And I wanted to be able to bring that experience, the same experience that I got, when talking to certain people, and let everybody and let the world hear, so that everybody can see their journey. We'll start off with me. My journey started very early. For those of you who don't know and listening, I was born 3 months early. I was born with hemiplegia, cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a condition which is caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain during the developmental stages. As a result, the person, or the baby, if you will, is faced with usually cognitive or neuromuscular issues, because the lack of oxygen to the brain usually affects one side or the other, or both. Many people who are affected by this condition either can be paraplegic, quadriplegic, diplegic, which is 2 legs and 1 arm, or have a variety of mix of the two. Mine is hemiplegia, which is my entire left side. So the right side, or my right hemisphere, was affected the most with my trauma. I was born, like I said, 3 months early. I spent the first month and change in an incubator, hooked up to tubes. I was 13 inches, 2.9 pounds, and, it was just a scary feeling for my parents on a daily basis. But with the help of them, with the wonderful doctors and everything else, I was able to kind of pull through. I started going to school at 9 months old for cognitive development and physical therapy, as well as occupational therapy. And through all of those, things that I went through at an early age, it really developed me into the person that I am today. I didn't know it at the time. My parents drive me back and forth to PT at 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. Didn't really know, went to school, and my upbringing was very normal. I had a lot of friends, lived on a cul-de-sac. We played baseball, football, ice hockey. We played it all. I played every sport. And, it wasn't, till I got very far out, kind of into my field, if you will, which we'll go into a little later, that I realized, that there was other people like me. There was a bigger community, and there was a lot of stuff that I could do to help. And being born this way or having to face these challenges, it really helped me in my career in shaping who I was as a coach and who I am today. I was one of those kids. If you told me you didn't really want me to do something or I couldn't, I was going to be the one to show you that I could. Played basketball all of high school, and that's where I finally got my first taste of working out, if you will. I started lifting in about the 10th grade with my uncle and my best friend, just to look better and everything. I was a heavier set kid, to put it lightly, and working out was a kind of a way for me to work on that. I actually hated it when I first started. We used to lift with the basketball team, and I thought it was the dumbest thing on the planet, moving these weights around, everything else. But, I started going to the gym on my own and really fell in love with it. But unfortunately, my senior year, I hurt my back, deadlifting the wrong way. I'm sure a lot of you out there can agree with me. If you do deadlifts the wrong way, they're one of my favorite exercises, but in done the wrong way, can wreak havoc on the back and different places. So upon me getting injured, nobody really knew what to do. I was working out and running with a bag back, and I had no idea what to do. And I was 16 years old, and I was kind of at a loss for words. I couldn't play, and it was just brutal. At 16 years old, finally went to physical therapy. My first kind of taste as a teenager with PT. They kind of stretched me out, put me through mobility, and I was fine within a month. But what really resonated with me is that when I had my injury at high school, at the time there was really nobody there to help me or tell me what to do or give me direction. So I kind of had to get through it myself. So that was my first kind of issues with sports science and things of that nature. After high school, I went into college, and I was able to earn a spot on the basketball team. I went to junior college initially, and there again, I hurt myself. I hurt my groin pretty bad, and again, was unable to play. And again, I don't know if it was, same thing or kind of the same hand, if you will. I was hurt, and nobody really knew what to do. And really at that point, I, saw the writing on the wall also, wasn't going to go to the NBA, wasn't the best. I went to college, I played basketball, I experienced it, but now it was time to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And right there, was kind of the time where I kind of made a vow that at no point was I going to let a kid who played sports, who was on a team, get hurt and have their careers ended in the weight room or prematurely. There's no reason why somebody should be getting hurt in a weight room and then be unable to play. If you're going to go out, either go out because it's your time, your talent isn't enough to get you to the next level, or if you do have an injury, do everything you can to come back. Not saying that my injury was the cause of me discontinuing playing basketball, but I think if I didn't have the injuries and all those things, I might have played a little bit. But everything does happen for a reason, and right there was the time that I kind of started getting into the strength and conditioning field, corrective exercise, and things of that, if you will. Upon graduating junior college, I went to Long Island University in Brooklyn. There is where I first started taking exercise science classes. And little did I know at the time, because of when I started working out in the 10th grade, I couldn't do normal exercises. I had to modify those exercises because of my cerebral palsy. My right side would always kind of take over naturally. So I had to do a lot of things to make sure that my left side was engaged, because initially when I first started with weightlifting and doing all those things, my left side was substantially weaker. Since then, I've been able to even that out. But when I first started, I couldn't just open up your basic muscle and fitness or buy a regular book book and say, okay, we're going to bench press, we're going to do flies. These are the things we're going to do. I also cannot squat because my calf on my left side is very tight, so I do not put weight on my left heel. Excuse me. Just going back to that, when I was in high school, going through the beginning phases of working out and getting involved in those things, I had to make a lot of modifications. Fast forwarding into college, when I came to LIU, once I started taking specifically exercise science classes, right away I just kind of understood a lot of the stuff that they were talking about in class. Anatomy was still hard, just like it is for everybody else, but I was able to make it through that. But when I took functional training classes, functional anatomy classes and all kinds of stuff, for programming and understanding how exercises worked, what they were for, and especially how to teach them, I was able to kind of pick that up pretty fast because I'd been doing that, without my knowledge for quite some time. I always did work at gyms too. I was always involved in gyms. So I also had that background too. I just love being in a weight room in a gym, believe it or not, up until that time. After I was at LIU, that's where I met Richard James, podcast number 1. You'll hear him referenced a lot, my mentor, the reason why I'm talking to everybody today. And right there, talking to him, being around him, watching him coach teams, I kind of knew this is something that I wanted to do, just being able to bring the passion that he had. And really just, I remember, like it was yesterday, we went into this weight room, real dingy place, but the women's basketball team was there working out. There was music going on. They were pushing tires. They were doing inverted rows, but, they were using a V handle and some chains. We didn't have TRXs at the time, but just, the hard work they were putting in and him kind of standing there, overseeing everything. And I was like, wow. I can take this same intensity, the same love that I have for exercise, and I can kind of give it to another group of people and watch them kind of flourish. I've always talked about strength conditioning is kind of when you get a new team, it's kind of like planting a seed in the ground, and as we add more programs or as we progress our program throughout the year for your team, you're putting water on your seed, you're giving it sunlight, and you're watching it growing, and once the season starts, once they start playing, your flower kind of starts to blossom there, and then you are able to see where it can go. And also, it's like raising a flower, like I said before. And also, as a coach, you're there to put on a show, if you will, kind of like a Broadway play. You have to always be on. You have to know when to speed up. You have to know when to get loud, be quiet. You have to kind of read the room, if you will. So a combination of, planting that seed and kind of going through those, that production, if you will, all that encompassed. So that was my first thing, and right from there I was kind of hooked. And then after that, I really started getting into the strength and conditioning field. The second part of that class, I started interning with Coach James. Started solely doing things with the team, ended up being an intern there. And then I went to Iona College, and I just really kind of, dove headfirst into this new thing. I was terrified at first, but as you know, everything that's scary, minds will jump in with both feet and see what happens, because growing up, I wasn't the captain type. I wasn't going to give a Braveheart speech before all the games. I was just a kid that worked really hard because, I knew that, natural ability, if you will, wasn't there. So I always made sure I came to practice first, stayed late, all that stuff, and just did everything I could to be the best I could on the basketball court for my team. But coaching for me was really kind of an eye-opener, because now, I was usually the quiet kid that worked hard, never quiet, but, never really, I wasn't going to take control and give, rah-rah speeches, but now I was the one everybody was looking for information. So, initially, not a lot of talking, not a lot of action. I just kind of oversaw weights. But then eventually, going through interns and being able to be exposed to a number of different colleges, I was able to get an internship at Texas Christian University in the summer of 2012. Upon graduating with my bachelor's, I went down there. All those coaches there, it was a fantastic experience. Got to work with the football team, got to work with the baseball team. The strength coach there, who I still talk to today, amazing strength coach, great guy. That whole staff down there, just an amazing place down there in Dallas. If you ever get a chance to go down there, like I said, well worth it, beautiful campus. Went down there, and upon my time there spending football and baseball, I was offered a graduate assistant scholarship at LIU to continue my education and finish out my master's. Upon returning home from Texas, I was kind of given the reins. I was the assistant strength coach for baseball, softball, first time with two teams, first time, kind of driving the bus, if you will. And right from the jump, I made programs and I was ready. I was terrified, but I was ready. This was my team, and we were going to get things going. And when I first started, I was a big scream guy, big yell guy, big kind of OCD, if you will, with control. Nobody in the weight room, everything had to be a certain way, and I'd kind of lose my mind, if you will, when nobody, things were going out of whack. And that's how it went for a little bit. Not that the guys didn't like me, but my way of getting respect was kind of yelling a little bit. And it wasn't until a little later on in my career that I realized that yelling is not the way to gain people's respect. We can do that a different way. After completing my first year as a graduate assistant, I was then approached, and the whole goal, when I started grad school and even the year before I graduated my bachelor's, was to be a strength and conditioning coach in professional baseball. It's what I wanted to do. It's where my heart was. I did every sport, from rugby all the way to fencing, and I enjoyed it, but baseball was really where my heart was. Just the dynamics of the position guys, the dynamics of the pitchers, how you kind of have two different teams, if you will. Everybody has a different personality, and everybody is fun, and it's just a good group of guys, a wonderful group of people, and just how the sport was, loved the culture. So that was my choice. So upon coming back and into my second year as a graduate assistant, I started to apply for some minor league teams. Initially, I did not want to go. I didn't want to leave the team. I felt I owed everybody the 2 years, all the players, they were like my kids, if you will. And I didn't want to let them down, and I wanted to stay there. However, from the guidance of a lot of my teachers, they said, listen, this is your dream. We've been planning on this. We've been working towards this for 3 years. It's time to go. If you get hired, you have to go. So, I was blessed to get a call that December with the New York Mets, and I was hired to be a strength conditioning coach. I ended up finishing my master's in spring training, and I always use this example. One day I was a graduate assistant student, and the next day I was in spring training as a professional strength coach. So, talk about a learning curve. Things just kind of jumped up real fast. But, when I went down there, everybody always asked, were you afraid? Were you nervous? And the answer was no. One of the things with me, especially with coaching, I've always had a big personality, and I love to talk. You talk to anybody that knows me, they'll tell you that I don't shut up, but that's why I didn't go to school to become a librarian. I ended up in the coaching realm. But anyway, when I first got down there, I was, just eager to get started and eager to, see what professional baseball really had to offer. And one of the things that I was just truly not worried about, but it was just building relationships. I just came from a school where I knew everybody. I went to school with everybody for such a long time. And now here you are, you're the new kid that's kind of just dropped off. And everybody kind of knows each other. All the other coaches have been there for a long time. All the players are familiar with all of them. And it was really just, that was my biggest concern. But, sure enough, after a few couple days, maybe 2 weeks of being there, I started getting real comfortable with the guys, started warming up to the coaches, great coaching staff there, learned a lot from everybody who's there. And then I started kind of, with the same relationship that I had with the guys from college. The only difference in the minor leagues is you can't yell at guys. You can't make guys run, and you can't scream and yell. So the biggest thing that I learned from my time there was that, the more that you could get to know someone and the more that you kind of treated them like a human being, the better that they would respond to you. Because you have to remember, in their eyes, you're just a kid or a guy that's coming from somewhere to tell them what to do. And, it is kind of a revolving door in the minor leagues. There's always somebody new, usually every year. So, it kind of takes a lot to gain their trust, because either they're used to you leaving, or if you're in charge of one team and a guy gets moved up, you're not going to see him anymore, except for spring training. So that was kind of a learning experience. That year, I was assigned to the Brooklyn Cyclones. Wonderful place. Still one of my favorite places to play. If you ever get a chance to go there, especially after COVID's over, next season, I don't think there's a better place to be in the middle of July, especially around 8:30 at night when it's about 76 degrees and that nice ocean breeze is blowing off the shore there down the right field line in Coney Island when it's packed jam full with 12,000 people. Still one of my favorite places, with the Thunderbolt in the background. Oh my God, it just... I think about it every day. It brings back the memories now. But back to where I was, I ended up with the Brooklyn Cyclones. That was my team, and I spent the remainder of the year there. I thought I was going to travel around the country, but instead I ended up 7 blocks from where I went to college. So not too much of a change, but it did end up helping me in the long run because I knew where everything was, and I was in a comfortable setting. After 3 years of being with the Cyclones, I kind of figured and came to the realization my time in the minor leagues was over. Great experience, wonderful time, but anybody that's been in the minor leagues can tell you, being away from your family 9 to 10 months out of the year and constantly just being on the go all the time starts to really take a toll. And I kind of wanted someplace I could call home, traveling back and forth across the country from New York to Florida, then back to New York all the time, wonderful experience, but not something that I wanted to do forever, and I kind of wanted to, get my feet set a little bit, build a little bit of a foundation. Upon leaving there, I ended up working at a facility out on Long Island, and I really started, diving into the private sector, started training the general pop as well as athletes, and started really developing and building my own business. From there, I started, like I said, with the general pop, and then I started training youth athletes. I got involved in that because one of the things that I noticed in the minor leagues is that a lot of guys had some issues with patterns. You get guys that are older, 22, 23, and you're noticing they're unable to squat, they're unable to hinge, they're unable to do certain things, and that's because they were never really taught the correct way. Not that they had bad coaching, but just different patterns or whatever may be the case. But a lot of times, it's very hard to fix somebody who's 24. So I kind of figured that if I could get them at 12 and 13, I would be able to teach them the right patterns, teach them that very, very important foundation. So when they got up to the age of 18 and 20, they would have that pattern so well ingrained that the risk of injury would be significantly lower, and they would be able to continue with their career and avoid kind of some of the shortcomings that I went through early on in my career. I started training a few youth athletes, and they were very successful. Not trying to say it had anything to do with me, but I just was helped me really relay information, and it 100% helped my coaching. For anybody out there, we talk about what to do or different ways to learn. Even if you want to be in the college sector, even if you just want to train professional athletes, take an internship or spend some time teaching some little kids. Number one, they're great. They're the most straightforward human beings on the planet. But also, if you can teach a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old how to squat, and you can kind of explain things to kids at those younger ages and get them to successfully execute what you're asking them, then in my opinion, you can coach anyone. If you can teach a 6-year-old how to squat, if you can teach a 10-year-old how to squat, when you get to a 20-year-old kid or somebody who's 50 years old, you can pretty much teach everybody. And from that, I just ended up building my own business, and with the youth athletes and then with the kind of general population. One of the things that stood out, and me and Chris talked about it on the last podcast, is that one of the things of the general pop is I started training a little bit of the older population, and those are the best people on the planet. Like I said, people that come in and are thankful for what you're doing with them on a daily basis. I don't think there's anything that can ever take that joy away from you, especially if you're passionate about this, you realize that what you're doing is actually changing someone's life for the better on a daily basis. And I have so many clients that I still talk to on a daily basis, and it changed my life, honestly. I mean, when I initially started, I didn't really want to do it, or I thought it'd be hard, but I've made so many wonderful relationships and so many life-changing experiences between the youth athletes and from, training the general pop and the older pop. And that is still something that I do today. And I will continue to do. Upon which I'm starting my own business. In 2008, I went back to LIU as the strength coach for the baseball and the softball team, as well as an adjunct professor there. And when I went back to LIU this time, I kind of had my coaching philosophy, if you will, figured out. I went in there not with a head of steam to scream, but I went in there with a plan to relay a message and to get everybody on the same page. One of the biggest things that I took away from the minor leagues is that as a strength coach in the minor leagues, as a strength coach in college, really, you kind of act as the buffer zone between the athletic training staff and the coaching staff. And people will come to you with problems. You have kids that, are batting 100 and they have family issues and things like that. And you kind of serve as their uncle, if you will, in the minor leagues a lot of times, and you're there to listen, and they come to you for advice because they end up trusting you. So fast forward, when I went back to LIU, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to develop the trust between me and the athletes, because any coach will tell you, once you develop that trust, your athletes will absolutely run through a wall for you, and they become your family. So I started off with a message. So every day from September on, I started off with a goal and a message. This is what we're doing. This is where we want to go. I asked them where they wanted to go, and a lot of it was, we want to go to regionals, we want to win conference. And that's what we talked about every day in September. We would set a goal, everybody would be in agreement with the goal, and then we would map everything out. And everywhere along the way, I would explain everything to them. So we were on the same page the whole time, and I had great support from the coaching staff there. And as we went through, pretty soon, everything started running like a well-oiled machine in a car factory. The guys would come in already warm. The captains that were there would take the responsibilities of making sure everybody was where they were. I would write the programs on the board. We would go through a quick quote or a life lesson. We'd get everybody fired up and we would get after it. 45 minutes with, two groups of 15 guys in the weight room. And, that's how the season went. I'm just so proud of them. I loved every minute of that year. By the time we got into the season, everybody was firing on all cylinders, and we just started to grow, man. And by the time we got to that conference tournament in Connecticut that year, we weren't, really supposed to win, but we went in there with, a big, huge fire. And, we were doing workouts in the hotel. We had guys coming in at the time, 20, 25 guys before the game on the same day, doing power workouts. Everybody just wanted to get after it. And there wasn't a single person on that team who didn't want to get better and didn't want to contribute. And we ended up, sweeping that 3-0, and we ended up getting invited to go to Coastal Carolina for the first time in school history, going to regionals. And let me tell you, for me, I know for the players it was huge, but for me it was just a wonderful experience. Best part of all, seeing those kids being able to play at that level and being able to see them perform. Unfortunately, we didn't go past that, but like I said, it's all about the experience, and that's what I talk about every day here on the show. It's all about those experiences. And from, my experience with college and, my cerebral palsy and coaching and playing sports, that is what I want to bring to the table. And that is what I've always wanted to do, is just be able to bring the passion of not only myself, when you talk to me, but everybody that I interview, continuously bring out that passion, and also help people as much as I can, and give people different roadmaps, and say, hey, if this isn't, he's here now, this is where he went. He's doing the same thing I did, but he didn't start off like everybody else. He started off in a different way, letting you know that just wherever you start doesn't matter. Your steps don't matter as long as they're in the right direction. You can pretty much start from anywhere at any age, and you can be anything you want as long as you put your mind to it. And I think that's a resonating message, and we always talk about that every day. I just want to thank everybody for their continuing support of the podcast, their continuing support of me. The reviews have been wonderful, the sharing, the comments, everything like that. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for